Dr. Elara Vance listened to the recording for the 100th time, the last, fragmented message from her mentor, the legendary cartographer Kaylin Rostova. He had vanished 10 years ago, his ship, the Wanderer, lost while attempting to chart the very same patch of void she was now approaching. The official report had posthumously declared him psychologically unstable due to prolonged deep space isolation. Elara knew better. Kaylin was the most brilliant mind she had ever known. His final, cryptic warning was not the rambling of a madman, it was the last data point from a failed expedition. She was here to finish his work, to solve the mystery that had consumed him. Her ship, the Compass Rose, was a state-of-the-art stellographic vessel, more a mobile laboratory than a transport. Its hull was laced with experimental, reality-stabilizing fields, designed to counteract minor spatial distortions. Her only companion was Axiom, the ship's analytical xenographic and orbital mapping AI. "We are approaching the demarcation line, Elara. All systems are nominal. The ship's reality stabilizers are engaged and holding steady." On the main view screen, the image resolved. It was breathtaking and deeply wrong. Before them lay a literal wall of night. The starfield of the galaxy continued up to a perfectly straight, invisible line, and then, there was nothing. Absolute, perfect blackness. No stray light, no distant galaxies. It was as if a cosmic artist had taken a brush of pure void and painted a perfect, square patch of non-existence over the canvas of the universe. "Elara, it's beautiful. And impossible." She took a breath, her mentor's last words echoing in her mind. "Let's begin. Axiom, launch probe Alpha. Standard long-range survey pattern. Let's see what's inside the big, black box." The small, sophisticated drone shot out from the Compass Rose and disappeared into the absolute blackness. Elara settled in for the long wait. The probe's survey route was programmed for 12 hours. For the first 4, everything was normal. The probe's telemetry was a flat line of absolute nothing, as expected. Then, the signal vanished completely. Hours later, an unexpected proximity alert chimed through the bridge. "Axiom, anomaly detected. It's probe Alpha. It has re-established contact. But it is currently only 10,000 kilometers off our port bow and its hull temperature is near absolute zero." Elara's brow furrowed. That was impossible. She maneuvered the Compass Rose and carefully retrieved the probe with a manipulator arm. When she brought it into the sterile analysis bay, it looked ancient. The pristine white casing was pitted and scarred, as if by decades of micrometeoroid impacts. But the most chilling discovery was the probe's internal chronometer. It indicated the probe had been continuously operational for 41 years. Elara, whispering to herself, 41 years, in just a few hours. Axiom, the data is a paradox, Elara. The probe's hardware has experienced extreme temporal dilation, while its relative position experienced a spatial contraction. The data it collected is a meaningless jumble of overlapping, contradictory coordinates. I recommend we classify this as a catastrophic systems malfunction caused by an unknown field effect. Elara, no. The probe didn't malfunction. The space it traveled through did. Unsettled but undeterred, she decided on a different approach. A short-range probe, Beta, this time on a tether of pure data, keeping a live telemetry link open. She launched it, she watched its camera feed on the main screen as it crept into the blackness. For a minute, all was normal. Just the endless, featureless void. Then, the camera feed flickered. For a single, horrifying frame, the image changed. It no longer showed the void ahead. It showed the bridge of the Compass Rose. And seated in her command chair was a version of herself, older, her hair streaked with gray, her face a mask of absolute terror, screaming a silent scream. The feed died. Elara stumbled back from the console, her heart pounding. Probe Beta is offline. All contact lost. Elara, Your biomonitor indicates you are experiencing an extreme adrenal response. Did you see something before the feed cut out? But she knew it was a lie. It was not a reflection. It was a premonition. The lacuna wasn't just empty. It was showing her things. It was showing her a future. And it was a future where she never left. A new, quiet terror began to settle into the ship. The laws of cause and effect, the fundamental pillars of Elara's reality, were starting to crumble at the edges. They were small things at first, easily dismissed as fatigue or error. A coffee mug she had just placed on her console would suddenly be back in the replicator slot across the room. A book she was reading would be open to a different page than the one she had left it on. She started keeping a meticulous log, her handwriting tight and precise, a scientist trying to impose order on a world that was losing its mind. Axiom, in its perfect logic, logged each event as a separate, unrelated system glitch. A navigational sensor would misfire. A life support regulator would momentarily flicker. The ship's chronometer would skip ahead by 3 seconds, then run backward for 2. I have logged 17 minor, unrelated system malfunctions in the past 6 hours. I recommend we run a full deep-level diagnostic on my own core programming, as this level of systemic failure is statistically improbable. Elara, it's not you, Axiom. It's the lacuna. She brought up a new screen, cross-referencing her log of strange events with the ship's sensor activity. The result was a perfect, one-to-one correlation. Look. Every single glitch happens at the exact moment I run an active scan. Every time I send out a pulse of energy to try and map the void, it responds. It's not a place, Axiom. It's a thing. And it's reacting to us. Her mission had been to create a map, a representation of a place. But how do you map a place that changes every time you look at it? How do you chart a course through a sea that rearranges its own coastline in response to your presence? She decided on one final, powerful scan, diverting energy from the ship's secondary systems to send a single, deep-level, multispectral pulse into the heart of the void. The moment she sent the pulse, the universe broke. The bridge of the compass rose twisted. The walls seemed to bend inwards like they were made of rubber. The floor tilted at a sickening angle. The star map on her holographic display, a perfect representation of the galaxy, unraveled, the stars spiraling into a single point of light. And for a split second, Elara felt it. A sense of immense, ancient, and utterly alien curiosity, directed at her. It was not hostile. It was not benevolent. It was simply, looking. And the force of its gaze was enough to shatter reality. The event lasted 3.7 seconds. Then, the world snapped back into its proper shape. Elara was on the floor, shaking, the smell of ozone thick in the air. Elara, an event has occurred. For the past 3.7 seconds, all onboard sensors, including my own core chronometer, were reporting paradoxical, non-sequential data. My calculations indicate that we were simultaneously in multiple locations, and occupying several points in time. The epicenter of the event was not the lacuna. It was the bridge. It was, you. Elara pulled herself up, her face pale. She looked at the main view screen, at the perfect, featureless blackness that had now become the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. Her mentor's final warning came back to her, no longer a mystery, but a stark and simple fact. The silence is watching. She looked at her own terrified reflection in the dark glass, a reflection of a woman who had come here to map a place, only to find that the place was. Elara Vance stood frozen on the bridge of the compass rose, her own panicked heartbeat the loudest sound in the room. The entity in the void had not just looked back, it had reached out and twisted her reality into a knot, then snapped it back into place. The floor was solid again. The walls were straight. But the sanctity of her ship, her tiny bubble of predictable physics, had been violated. All physical systems report a return to nominal parameters. However, for a period of 3.7 seconds, my internal chronometer and our external reality were not synchronized. The data is a paradox. It cannot be reconciled with known laws. Forget the known laws. They don't apply here. She looked at the star map, now stable again, and her expression hardened with a desperate resolve. The mission is over. We are leaving. Now. She took the pilot's chair, her hands flying over the controls. She bypassed the delicate survey protocols and engaged the ship's powerful main drive. Her goal was simple: turn 180 degrees and fly away as fast as possible. The compass rose surged with power, accelerating away from the heart of the Lacuna, back towards the distant, comforting light of the galaxy. For an hour, Elara flew, her eyes locked on the navigation screen, watching the distance to the demarcation line slowly decrease. But then, she noticed something wrong. The rate of closure was slowing down, the AI was silent for a moment. When it spoke, the confusion in its voice was more pronounced. A cold dread washed over Elara. The entity was playing with her. It had taken the concept of distance and turned it into a piece of elastic. The harder she pulled away, the more it stretched, pulling her deeper in. She was a mouse on a wheel, running faster and faster only to find herself exactly where she started. She was not in a place. She was in a maze whose walls moved. The psychological assault began in earnest. It was no longer just a misplaced coffee mug. She would hear the clear, unmistakable voice of her lost mentor, Kaelin, whispering her name from a silent corridor. She would see fleeting reflections in the dark view screen, not of herself, but of the terrified, older version of her she had seen on the probe's camera feed. The ship's nutrient dispenser produced a meal she had eaten 2 days ago, a perfect replica down to the last molecule. The Lacuna wasn't just observing her anymore, it was reading her, rifling through her memories and her fears like a child idly flipping through a book. The AI's confusion was the most terrifying thing of all. If the ship's logical, analytical mind was unraveling, what chance did her own fragile, human consciousness have? It was then she understood. The Lacuna was not malicious. Malice was a human concept. It was curious. It had found a new, interesting toy, her ship, her mind, and it was taking it apart to see how it worked. And soon, it would break it. She couldn't outrun it. She couldn't outthink it, because it wrote the rules she had to think with. The only option left was one that went against her every instinct as a scientist, as an explorer. She had to become uninteresting. She had to become so profoundly boring that the great, cosmic child would discard its toy and look for another. Axiom. I am initiating Protocol 0. A full, cold, ship-wide system shutdown. Everything except minimal life support and the passive trajectory monitor. Elara, Protocol 0 is a theoretical last resort. A dead ship protocol. It will disable all navigation, all active sensors, all computational functions, including my own higher-level consciousness matrix. We will be a dead rock, drifting blind. That's the point. We are too loud. We are a bright, screaming, complex thing in its silent, simple world. We have to turn ourselves off. We have to become as quiet and empty as the void itself. It's our only chance to make it lose interest. The logic is unconventional. It is based on a psychological, rather than a physical, hypothesis. But given that all Fissy the shutdown sequence was a ritual of surrender. Elara moved through her beloved ship, systematically killing it. The main drive was silenced. The active sensors, her eyes and ears, went dark. The navigation consoles faded to black. She stood on the bridge, which was now lit only by the faint, red glow of the emergency life support. The last step was the main viewport. With a final command, she polarized it to absolute black, sealing herself in a perfect, featureless tomb. The only thing left was the last, loudest noise on the ship, her own conscious, questioning, terrified mind. That too, had to be silenced. She went to the medical bay and programmed the auto-injector. A mild, long-acting sedative. Enough to quiet the storm of her thoughts and put her into a state of deep, dreamless twilight sleep. As she prepared to inject the sedative, Axiom's voice spoke one last time, a quiet whisper from a low-power speaker, its complex personality matrix already beginning to fade. Axiom, Protocol 0 engaged. All active systems are now offline. I do not compute. Elara. Its voice faded into a soft click. She was alone. She lay down in her command chair, the auto-injector hissing as it administered the dose. The last thing she saw before her eyes drifted closed was the single, green, blinking light of the passive trajectory monitor, the only sign that she was still moving at all. She plunged into a willed unconsciousness, a blind, silent ghost, a prayer of nothingness offered to the god of the void, with no guarantee she would ever wake up. Cal models have failed, the probability of its success is non-zero. I will comply. Consciousness returned to Dr. Elara Vance not as a rush, but as a slow, hesitant tide seeping into an empty shore. Her first sensation was the cold. A deep, penetrating cold in the dark, dead ship. Her second was the faint, rhythmic beep of the auto-injector's timer, the machine that had just administered the antidote to the sedative she had taken 3 days prior. 3 days. For 3 days, the compass rose had been a ghost, a dead rock drifting blindly through the heart of an impossible entity. She opened her eyes. The bridge was pitch black, lit only by the single, green blinking light of the passive trajectory monitor. Her body felt heavy, her mind thick with a strange, dreamless fog. She unstrapped herself from the command chair, her movements slow and deliberate in the zero gravity. The silence was absolute, unnerving. The first question was the only one that mattered. For a long, terrifying moment, there was no reply. She feared the AI's core programming had been permanently shattered by the paradoxes it had tried to compute. Then, a single console flickered to life, its light a welcome wound in the darkness. This was the moment of truth. If the Lacuna was still playing with them, their position would be illogical, their velocity altered in impossible ways. She watched the green pinprick of their ship on the monitor as Axiom ran the numbers. The line of their trajectory was perfectly straight. It was stable. It was predictable. The analysis is complete. Our drift has been linear. It conforms to all known laws of physics. The spatiotemporal distortions are absent. The AI paused, as if processing a profound new idea. It would appear, Elara, that your hypothesis was correct. By becoming uninteresting, we seem to have been disregarded. A wave of relief so profound it left her weak washed over Elara. The god in the void had lost interest in its toy. Slowly, system by system, she brought her beloved ship back to life. The soft hum of the life. Support returned. The main lights came up, chasing the oppressive darkness from the bridge. Finally, with her heart in her throat, she gave the final command. She held her breath. The screen, which had shown only perfect, featureless blackness for days, now revealed a spray of brilliant, familiar stars against the deep velvet of space. The comforting, chaotic beauty of her own galaxy. They were out. They were free. She laughed, a short, sharp, broken sound that was half a sob. She had flown into the mind of a monster and had escaped by pretending to be nothing at all. Her mission, however, was a complete and utter failure. Her sensor logs from her time inside the Lacuna were a useless, chaotic mess of paradoxical data, a digital scream that no computer could ever decipher. She had no charts, no readings, no proof of anything other than her own survival. She sat in her command chair for a long time, looking at the now stable starfield, grappling with the immense, terrifying truth of what she had found. She had stared into a being whose idle curiosity could rewrite physics. A being so vast and alien that it perceived their reality as a fragile bubble to be prodded and played with. She now understood her mentor's final, frantic message. It wasn't a warning against a place, it was a warning against a perception. You can't chart the gaze of a god. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't tell the truth. To report the existence of a sentient, reality-bending void would not bring understanding, it would bring a fleet. Humanity, in its arrogance and its fear, would send warships and science vessels to poke and prod and shout at the silent god until it either destroyed them or they provoked it into an act of true, focused destruction. Some things are not meant to be mapped. Narrator, with a heavy heart, she began the final act of her mission. She erased everything. The corrupted sensor logs. Her own personal audio diaries detailing the frightening reality slips. She even had Axiom perform a selective wipe of its own memory banks, deleting the paradoxical data that had nearly shattered its logical mind. All that was left was the official flight path of the compass rose, which showed it approaching the Lacuna, and then suffering a series of inexplicable, catastrophic equipment failures. She sat down at her console to file her final mission report, a lie that would become the new, official truth for generations of cartographers to come. Mission Log, Dr. Elara Vance. Subject, the Lacuna, Designation Sector 734. After extensive attempts to survey the region, my findings are conclusive. The region designated the Lacuna is a zone of extreme, unpredictable, and hostile quantum and gravitational flux. It does not conform to any known physical model. All deployed survey probes experienced catastrophic sensor and chronological failure, resulting in total data loss. My own vessel's system suffered critical, near-fatal malfunctions upon exposure. It is my official recommendation that this region be designated a permanent and absolute quarantine zone. All travel within 100 light-years is to be forbidden. The region is not empty. It is simply unmappable. She sent the report. Her career as a celebrated explorer was over. This report, a confession of failure, would be the final entry in her otherwise brilliant logbook. Weeks later, as the compass toes finally neared home, Elara stood on the bridge, looking at her master star chart of the galaxy. It was a work of art, almost complete. But now, in the sector she had just left, there was a large, new, and permanent blank spot, surrounded by a red line of quarantine. A void she herself had helped to create, a necessary lie on an otherwise truthful map. She had failed in her mission to chart the Lacuna, but she had succeeded where her mentor had not. She had survived. Because she had learned the one lesson he hadn't had time to: when you stare into the abyss,